Welcome to Oyate Today. Oyate means the people in Lakota, brought to you by Skull Construction.
Hi, welcome to Oyate Today. I am your host, Richie Richards. Oyate Today is produced by Tim and Jackie Gallego. Tim is an enrolled member of the Oglala Sioux tribe. Our guest tonight is Mr. Peter Strong and Mary Bordeaux of Racing Magpie here in Rapid City. Thank you both for being here tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Richie. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. I'm interested in what you guys are doing here in our community, as well as the work that's being done to support our artists and the work that they're doing as well. So this is going to be a good discussion for us. Peter, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, for those of us who haven't become familiar with who you are, sir.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Ohio, and I went to grad school in D.C., and I've always been working in museums. And then through a chain of events, I ended up taking the director position at the Heritage Center at Red Cloud Indian School down in Pine Ridge. And I worked with Brother Simon for about a year before he passed away. Mary was the collections manager there and then the curator, and I worked there for 8 years as the director. And then we moved to Rapid City, and I worked for First Peoples Fund for about a year and a half. And then, as we'll talk about Racing Magpie, that's just an opportunity to get back into the community and really focus on supporting Native artists and building community through the arts.
Sure. And Mary, if you could talk to us about yourself as well, please.
Yeah, I went to high school with Richie. Yeah. No, but I went to the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, and I got a bachelor's in museum studies. And then I did an internship at the Smithsonian, at the National Museum of the American Indian, and then came back to Pine Ridge. That's where I grew up. Mm-hmm. But, and the one museum on Pine Ridge was advertising for a collections manager 2 months after I moved home. And so I applied and got the job there and worked with Brother Simon for a couple years before he passed away. So I worked at the Heritage Center for 10 years, started as collections manager, and then was curator and then interim director. Mm-hmm. And then I left there and moved to work at Crazy Horse Memorial, and I was the curator and director of cultural affairs there for 2.5 years. And then I'm working on my doctorate degree, so I took a year off to concentrate on school a little bit, and then I started, this past fall, I started working at First Peoples Fund and recently become the vice president of programs and operations there.
Sure. And so could you, Racing Magpie was established in, well, let's see, it was founded in 2014, 15 then?
15.
Okay, and then you got your building and your space here off of 5th Street in January of 2016.
That's
then.
right, yep.
And so how did you come about this building anyway? It's a great historical place in our town, but how did you come across the building?
Well, I would take a step back and say, you know, we started out with Racing Magpie starting with wanting to present a contemporary Native or a modern Native art gallery, an opportunity for a space for Native artists to push the boundaries of what people think of Native art, or think of, yeah. And then, but also provide an opportunity for our community as a whole to learn from that. And we needed offices. That's kind of where we started. Mm-hmm. But then we started talking with Linda Anderson, who's the executive director of Black Hills Playhouse. And she said, well, we need some offices. And and what about like adding some artist studios? You guys have talked about that before. So it kind of snowballed. But then we looked around, and it made us nervous. But we looked around town, we looked at different spots, and someone told me I should talk to MJ Adams, who's a chef, and she used to run the Corn Exchange, and that she and her husband owned the AB's Feed and Seed, this whole complex over there, and you know, that they were being creative people, they were interested. So I got introduced to her at a reception at the Doll, and we got a good relationship going. They had a vision of some sort of artist commune in the back.
Sure.
But it just, you know, that
Yeah.
takes time and a lot of different things. So us coming in with this vision really clicked. And we were going to start in the loading dock building in the back. There was a business in front, so we turned it from dirty storage. We did a lot of elbow grease and putting in insulation and doors and building walls, and then the business moved out of the front, and we thought, should we take on twice as much rent? Why not?
Yeah. Because
So
that's what you do.
But it was
Yeah.
important, right? We wanted to be right downtown. We wanted this very authentic space for artists where they're creating their work. They're building a community themselves.
For Native people
For
too.
Native people
Yeah.
to
Sure.
have a place in downtown Rapid City where they feel comfortable and have ownership in it in a lot of ways.
Sure.
So it kind of built, and that building is really great in a lot of ways because of location, but it was a place where a lot of people came. It was part of their childhood. It was the place they came for dog food or chicken feed or,
Right.
Yeah.
and it's right on the railroad track, which is kind of fun to have the train roll by a few times a day, but it's also, it's that idea of movement and sharing, and we have great neighbors. We have Barefoot Dance, so we have a dance school, and we have At Home Design, who's a interior design company. So it's this real great creative vibe going on there too.
Excellent community
Yeah.
in that area, definitely.
Yeah.
And Mary, could you talk to us a little bit about the inspiration behind the naming of Racing Magpie? Then, where did that name come from?
Yeah, it took us so long we went through all kinds of, we were almost called a sacrificial lamb. We went through so many iterations
'Cause
of.
Mary had a little lamb.
Like Mary had a little lamb. But of different names of what we wanted it to be. And we wanted something that Lakota people could identify with, but was open enough that non-Lakota people could still kind of gravitate towards. And I had done a show, curated an exhibition, I don't know, a few years before, about the Pate Oyate. And so we was doing more research into the great race of the Black Hills and the Lakota emergence story, and how the magpie had rode on the back of the bison. And this was the story that I learned growing up. I know with other stories for Lakota people that this one is a Cheyenne story.
Okay.
But the magpie rode on the back of the bison and won the race for all the two-legged what happened around the Black Hills. And so just thinking about this little magpie being resourceful and tenacious, I guess, and writing,
Sure.
and then the support of the Pate allowing the magpie to be the winner. There was something about that. It just was inspiring to me, or to us, and about racing. And so that's where so we wanted to be that racing magpie.
Sure. So it's really about carrying on that tradition and kind of championing and continuing those stories through art. Then is kind of the basis and the inspiration for that.
Right.
Right.
And it ties back to what we try to do, which is bring people together, Lakota, non-Lakota, but we all live here in this place and we need to support each other in some way. And we do it through creative things. I mean,
Well, and acknowledging that
Yeah.
the land and the area that we are in is Lakota land. And other this used to be such a gathering place for so
Yeah.
many tribal nations historically, before Hay Camp, before Rapid City, before settlers. This was a place where Native people gathered and came before they went in to pray in the
Sure.
Black Hills. And just kind of mimicking that gathering place, that's kind of what we wanted Racing Magpie to be, recognizing and acknowledging Lakota people and our history and connection to the area.
So, Peter, how many artists are involved with Racing Magpie? I know you have studio space down there,
Right.
gallery space, but how many artists are kind of housed or currently housed in the gallery and studio area down there?
well, it's always a little vague because people are working on projects, but we have about 19 artists and people working for arts organizations in the space. It's about half native, half non-native, which was a strategy we had of, again, centering around Lakota people,
Sure.
but then being inclusive and engaging with our entire community. So it's about 19 artists. We've got individual artists. We have a bookstore. We have Black Hills Playhouse with their offices, a whole letterpress shop at the end, which is another nonprofit. So we've got all these really cool people. I soak in their coolness when I'm there.
Yeah.
But I think, and we're looking to, we're getting close to expanding into another section of the building that's a little more industrial. So we're adding more space. We're saying it's louder and dirtier artists can be in there. You know, they can do some welding and cutting and not worry so much about the historic building that we're in. So that number will continue to grow, and that doesn't include the groups that come in every month and the writers that come for book signings and musicians who play for different things that we have all year. So
Cool.
and the artists in the gallery too.
Yeah.
Peter, Mary, we're going to take a break. When we get back, we're going to learn a little bit more about the events that's held and sponsored by Racing Magpie, as well as a little bit more about the art movement here in Western South Dakota. We'll be back after a word from our sponsors.
Our future is our children. Their hope is you. Hi, Jeff Bridges here. Help our children grow strong for the next 7 generations. 20% of Rapid City school children are Native American. Many come from difficult situations, experiencing hopelessness and despair. Rural America Initiatives brings hope and opportunity, one dream at a time, one child at a time, one family at a time. Please, make a tax-deductible contribution. Be a part of the dream.
You can't predict life's ups and downs. You just give it all you've got to stay on top. But it's easier with a partner like Security First Bank. Since 1898, we've been riding with you through the country's biggest ups and downs. And this is where we'll stay. Security First Bank, a relationship you can count on. Member FDIC.
You know, it's really busy in the coffee house, not just in the morning, but all day long. And it's really important that we serve our customers hot coffee that's ready for them when they're ready for it.
We get that, Michelle. And our team at Black Hills Energy will make sure you have the electricity you need to keep that Java nice and hot. Speaking of hot Java, how about a cup for the road? Black Hills Energy. Life sponsored by Energy.
Nia na mie, ehash unkichi trokecha shni. Wiki ampete yuchla hinapcha, chawan blake sa. Nish wiki walaka cha, hechitu wanjicha. Mitakuye oyasi.
Once again, our guests tonight is Peter Strong and Mary Bordeaux of Racing Magpie here in Rapid City. Once again, thank you both for being here tonight. Peter, could you talk to me a little bit about, or talk to us a little bit about the consultations that you're involved in, kind of with the area, the region then?
Yeah, you know, we do a lot with our background in museums and the arts. We have this desire to get out to specifically Native communities and help them think about what their community needs as far as a cultural center or a museum, without being too Western in those ideas, really understanding the needs of preservation and sharing culture and preserving. So we do some of that. We've worked with a lot of groups who need help with arts consulting, as far as everything from collections management, you know, helping individual collectors catalog their work, or institutions, to planning arts programming at places like Regional Health, or helping the airport manage their arts program display, and working with the Bush Foundation, and who else have we worked with? Yep, ATOM, the Association of Tribal Archives, Libraries, and Museums. We're helping Bush and ATOM launch a scholarship that comes out. We'll be announcing on Monday. So we do a lot of those things, and it's all about, we really look for projects that play to our strengths, but also really, again, centering Native artists, centering artists, and strengthening the arts world around here too.
And I guess that's what I was going to ask you, Mary, is how, I know earlier you mentioned and talked about the role that Native American art plays in this area, but how important is it for, say, a place like Regional Health or another office or organization area to have proper representation of Native artists and Native art in general? I mean, what role does that play kind of in our culture and in our area?
Well, I mentioned earlier about acknowledgement. I think, that's where I think healing can start for a community, is acknowledging that the space that you're in, the place where your house is built, where our hospital is built here in Rapid City, all historically used to be land that Lakota people used and were a part of, and that acknowledging that, and you can do that acknowledgement through art and supporting Lakota artists, and then supporting other Indigenous artists from the area. And through this representation, and not just what I call long hair, feathers, and sunsets, like looking at the continuum of Lakota art, because Lakota people are not stagnant. We were always innovators and always looking to progress ourselves. We didn't. It's like when we received like a metal needle, we weren't like, oh, we can't use that. That's not something we created. I mean, I just imagine if I always had to make bone needles and then someone handed me a metal needle, that I wouldn't be like, oh, I can't use that because I didn't make it. Yeah. That I would be like, oh yeah, because now I have more time to do the other things I need to be doing now that I have a metal needle or a spool of thread rather than sinew. That those things, like we were smart enough to accept new technologies and anyway, but acknowledging, using art to acknowledge. I think it's important to acknowledge the land that you're on, and you can do that through art. You can have hard conversations through art about issues that you may not have be comfortable speaking about, because you can get people from different demographics in front of art. Yep. And so I think those are places hard conversations can be had.
And I would add that, I would just add that artists talk about those things without words. They talk about those difficult situations or concepts or things like racism or identity. It's less verbal, so that creates space for people to connect with it more emotionally and on different levels than just talking to. So it takes it to a deeper level.
Not only that, but even as a native or non-native in the community, when you go into a space that features native artists or native art, whether it's a buffalo hide or a painting of some sort, pottery or wherever the case may be, it's really a welcoming space or a welcoming sign, because a lot of the features within that art is spiritual and spirituality. Sure. And so it's a really comforting experience to have that around when you're going, say, to the doctor or to the dentist or other places like that.
If you think about it historically, like Native people don't have very good experiences with hospitals, right? So many horrible things have happened to us in hospitals, from not getting the treatment we need to forced sterilization of women. They're not comfortable places for Native people, right? So if you go into a space and it's acknowledging your culture, maybe then you'll start to have good experiences there. Yeah. And I think it just creates, our state talks a lot about, what's the word? Reconciliation. Yeah.
Yes.
And we can't have reconciliation because we've never had a relationship before. So we should build that relationship so then we can continue to be better together, right?
Sure.
And using art and acknowledgement is the place to start that.
Definitely not a bad thing to have art helping to repair race relations, especially in South Dakota. Peter, can you tell me a little bit about Native Pop coming up this summer? I understand it's happening in July here in Rapid City. Could you talk about your role as executive director of Native Pop?
Sure.
And Native Pop, actually, People of the Plains?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Yep.
Native Pop, People of the Plains, a gathering of arts and culture. This is the 6th year that's happened in Rapid City at Main Street Square. third weekend of July. It's a really great event where we center around a high quality art market with 50 artists from around the Great Plains region. But we have culture bearers there sharing their cultural knowledge with people. They're musicians, a fashion show started a couple years ago, and a film showcase as well. And this year we're partnering with Vision Maker Media, who's a great organization for Native film. And you know, Mary was on the committee there for 5 years. I was on it 5 years, and one of our consulting jobs is to be the executive director of Native Pop this year. And it's July 20 and 21, Main Street Square. There's a reception at the Doll, and all day on Saturday at Main Street Square. And it's, you know, I think there's always been a need for, a desire for and a need for a high quality Native art market in Rapid City. And there have been a lot of attempts at figuring out the right pieces, and there is a great committee that came together. Sandy Swallow was one of the first people who, she was the founder who reached out to Yuki Nagase's project here at Main Street Square, got an initial grant, and then it's really just built and built. It's going to be pretty incredible again this year.
And what's the date for this?
July 20 and 21.
July 21st, 20th and 21st. Then.
Yep.
Peter, Mary, we're going to take a break. When we get back, we're going to learn a little bit more about Racing Magpie and the role that they have in our community here in Rapid City. We'll be back after a word from our sponsors.
Native American children make up 20% of our school system in Rapid City. Rural America Initiatives, we have a capital campaign going on to build a first-class structure for these children. They've survived for 25 years in modular structures. It's time to bring them together to see this become a dream for these children come true.
Please consider donating to Rural American Initiatives and all they have to offer, from Head Start to high school, in empowering American Indian youth in succeeding in their goals.
It's really difficult in any medical clinic when we see patients injured in car wrecks who cannot afford the medical treatment that they need. So many of them had an insurance claim that they settled on their own without taking this into consideration. Of course, the insurance company won't open their claim after it's been settled, so they cannot get the medical care necessary to recover from their injuries. Before settling a claim, it would be wise to contact the insurance claim experts at Moore Faust Injury Law Group.
Native Sun News has been voted the best weekly newspaper in its class for 2015 by the South Dakota and North Dakota Newspaper Associations. You can find a copy of the Native Sun News at many businesses and vending machines in Rapid City and the surrounding area, and on all 9 reservations. We publish every Wednesday, so advertisers and subscribers can reach our diverse readership by calling 605-721-1266. The Native Sun News covers the other side of the story.
Being connected to him with the earth.
Positive pride. Pride of being Lakota.
Look around you and look at your culture. Look at the people who care about you. There is hope. There is always hope. There will always be hope.
Suicide isn't the Lakota way. If someone you know needs help, please call 867-HOPE, a public service message from the Lakota Voice Project.
Hi, welcome back to Oyate Today. Our guests tonight once again is Peter Strong and Mary Bordeaux of Racing Magpie here in Rapid City. It's been a great discussion so far. Thank you so much for being here again.
Sure.
Peter, could you talk a little bit about some of the featured artists that you have kind of housed or such there at Racing Magpie?
Yeah, and it'll be tough. I apologize in advance to the ones I don't mention.
Yeah.
But I think you know, we have a wide variety of different artists at different stages in their careers. We have established artists like Ray Tisdale, who's a well-known wildlife photographer in the area, and Dwayne Wilcox, who's really well-known for his ledger art and his humor and a lot of different things that he does, award winner at a bunch of different shows. And then some younger artists like Mike Two Bowls has a studio. There's a young lady named Lindsay Nolte who started as a volunteer gallery assistant with us in a little tiny studio, and she helped us with social media, but she really enjoyed it well enough that she stepped up into a full-size studio, and she's making her own art. it's hard to, there's so many of them, but it really ranges from traditional Lakota art to photography and more graffiti-based art. We do have Lucy Ganji, who runs Scrap Iron Press, a whole letterpress studio that's an incredible space where you can come and learn how to make art using techniques that were used to make newspapers in the past. And then I'd say, you know, Lily Mendoza, who runs Birdcage Bookstore, she's one of our most recent additions. And we weren't quite sure how it would work. We really wanted it to be a space for artists to create work. And Lily approached us and said, you know, I sell books, I work with all these writers, we have ideas to do more events. And she envisioned it as a small space to sell books, but it was more about community events, and that hooked us. That's where we said it expands our ability to work with writers and illustrators, authors, poets, and it builds on her relationships in that community. And so that was, it's been incredible. They've started the Black Hills Indigenous Writers Festival. Last year was the first year, and they're doing it again this year in June. Just doing the different book signings and poetry readings, and it's just been an amazing part of who we are. And she actually expanded into 2 units now, so she's growing and continuing to do amazing work.
Lily's awesome.
Yeah.
I've met her a couple of times. We've actually had her on Oyate today as well.
She sat in our seats here.
Mary, what would you say the goal, or how, as far as Racing Magpie goes, what, you know, for Mary to sleep good at the end of the night, knowing that she accomplished goal A and goal B for that day, I mean, what would be the goal of Racing Magpie? I mean, how do you see yourself accomplishing your goal as part owner? Is it part owner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Racing Magpie, like I think we mentioned it in the beginning, is to have a space that is centered around Native people, that it centers Lakota voices and Lakota ideas, but is inclusive for everybody. I like when Lakota people come into Racing Magpie and feel comfortable, that they're not on the defense, they're not worried about being categorized as something or looked at differently, but that they come there and they feel comfortable.
Sure.
That's what I want for Racing Magpie.
You know what I was most impressed with Racing Magpie is you made a home right in downtown Rapid City. You didn't choose to be on the outskirts, on the west side, on the north side. You said right here, downtown Rapid City. Native Heart is here to stay, and we're going to have a presence here in Rapid City. I appreciate what both of you are doing here for us. I appreciate what you're doing for artists. I want to thank our sponsors, our producers. I want to thank Prairie Edge for hosting our show tonight, and I want to thank you for making Oyate Today a part of your night.
You've been watching Oyate Today, brought to you by Skull Construction.
Yo ha bo, way yo ha yeah.